We continue the discussion now with municipal analyst Desmond Golding. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. You've watched what some of the commentary has been from the other pundits, but I'd like to hear from you your assessment of what really happened, the reasons behind why we saw that chaos of violence that erupted during that Electoral council meeting on Thursday. I know we have become all too familiar with scenes like this, but why should it continue to result in what we saw?
Good evening, Tsapiso and the listeners. I think the theatre of chaos that we witnessed at Ekurhuleni last week, it's a sideshow. For me, it's part and parcel of a bigger endemic problem, which is political contestation. It's going to get worse with the impending elections. I think at the heart of it, it's a contestation for the electorate. It's a contestation for numbers, a contestation for resources that would actually be put to bear by political parties. The third part is that it has got a colossal impact on service delivery, on financial management, on judicial governance. Worse off, it will have actually a huge impact on how the businesses also decide to deploy their capital in these affected cities.
So then let's go further into it, Mr. Golding, because I want us to discuss that. But for now, I want to understand something that was raised by one of the commentators there, which is something that I was wondering myself. So the councillors were in a discussion on the amendment to the motion of no confidence in the executive mayor, Sivuyile Ngotwana. And it's not the first such occurrence, particularly in that Ekurhuleni Metro Council. But is there a lack of clarity in procedure for what should be done? It should be a fairly straightforward thing. But what we saw, continuous descending into violent scenes, is it more about the lack of clarity or the internal infighting in the parties that are involved in these motions?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the contesting parties, which is the ANC and the EFF, have to be able to sit down and resolve whatever differences they have. So what you are seeing there, it's a showcase of those endemic problems between the two political parties which are in coalition. I think the rules of engagement are clear, but what you are seeing, this whole gerrymandering, this whole flexing of muscle is for contestation, for power, and I would dare say that even if the mayor could be removed, the mayor is not the custodian of quote-unquote real service delivery, because the service delivery happens at departments which are headed by MMCs. So for me, removing of the mayor would not solve the problem. What will solve the problems is that the rules of engagement must be clear. The coalition parties must be able to have dispute resolution mechanism among themselves. And thirdly, we need also to be able to have a professionalized administration or bureaucracy which will be able to be insulated from these disputes between political parties.
So therein lies the rub. Therein lies the rub. It's been a discussion that's been ongoing for years, mainly being focused on the electoral system. For instance, the ANC's proposed amendment to the motion of non-confidence was that the party with the most seats be put forward as a mayoral candidate. And then we saw the DA that was suggesting that, in fact, everything should be held off. The council should be dissolved until the national election on the 29th of May. So I'm just wondering, some of these conflict resolution methods, are they born out of self-interest, or is there absolutely no regard to the legislation, guidance on the electoral law?
I think there is a framework or an attempt of a framework to be able to manage these particular disputes, particularly within the municipal space. But I know that there is also the contestation by different political parties, by the DA, for an example, that says, let's have new elections. I think it's a bit opportunistic. What becomes important is that, for me, you could actually have the clarity of rules that in fact have been proposed by the ANC. But also what is at the heart of it is the proportional representation that we have in this country that also result into these hung municipalities. proportional representation by its nature means that it's not a winner takes all. So this will continue. And the sad part is that this will actually snowball into provincial and national elections. And we will begin to see these theaters of chaos at that particular level with disastrous consequences, because immediately when it happens at that level, it will have a huge negative impact on our microeconomic behavior in this country, where South Africa's risk profile will increase. And you would find that it will be a deterrent for foreign direct investment. It will be a deterrent for any positive rating for the country to be able to attract cheaper and reasonable capital. It will even have an impact on the monetary policy outlook, where you'd find that inflation will just be on a runaway spiral. So the long and the short of it is that this is just the beginning, and we need to be able to come
and this is my thing. Case in point, we see in the Tshwane Metro, for instance, it faces the possibility of another adverse AG report after the mayor, Silius Brink, was accused of sitting on it. And he, in his last state of the city statement, said that he actually doesn't, expect that things will change, given the fact that the extent of the findings of the AG is so great that he can't, or as a metro, they can't jump from adverse to unqualified to clean. But doesn't mean that communities must just start accepting that municipalities are dysfunctional, that they're unable to perform financially.
I think this kind of mediocrity, this kind of lack of prudential financial government must be dismissed with the content it deserves. You know, the AG last year in May issued a warning, a stern warning, that the coalition instability are resulting into poor and failure of prudential financial management in this country. And it's something that we need to take it serious. Ekurhuleni, for an example, they are running a risk of losing their clean audit. Tshwane would get worse. We have also seen as well in areas like the Durban Metro as well, where these contestations, these instabilities are happening. So the long and the short of it is that this must be arrested, because at the end of the day, it's the residents which are in fact at the end of the stick that are receiving the brunt of these instabilities, because sewage is not being taken care of, litter is not being removed, jobs are not creating at local level because business is running away from areas that are unstable. There is no proper supply of electricity. The municipalities have no financial management systems. Municipalities have no financial sustainability measures. Municipalities have no revenue enhancement. So what I'm saying is the colossal impact, it's snowballing into all these other facets, which at the end of the day is affecting the residents. And I think political parties must be serious.
And that's what I want to talk about. One of the other commentators was saying that a change of political actors isn't going to change things. We often talk about the need for political will. So when people go to the polls and vote for their preferred political party, what are they actually getting? Because we've seen the patronage system is endemic even within these political parties, even though they trade accusations on who is more corrupt. If we talk about eThekwini, which is what you mentioned, the sources for the lack of service delivery have been pointed to political interference, corruption, skills shortages, supply chain inefficiencies. If the political parties cannot change the behavior of their members, and they cannot adhere to the electoral law to which that they signed up to, and as you say, there are legislative directives in place, then what will change? And do the multi-party pact ambitions actually have any chance to survive, for instance?
You know, political parties in a body politica are by their very nature driven by self-interest to be able to govern. For me, what becomes a critical mechanism to resolve these issues is when you professionalize your civil servant, when you professionalize your bureaucracy. We've seen in other countries like the UK, and other countries that have got coalition government in Europe and other parts of the world. When you've got a professional bureaucracy or a professional civil service, whatever is happening at political level, the instabilities, the civil service is able to be a buffer against all those instabilities. The civil service is able to continue to deliver the services that the residents and the citizens of that particular country is actually expecting. So my point is very simple, is that the rules of engagements are there. They need to be improved, not only at municipal level, but also at provincial and national level. After you have been able to reshape the rules of engagement, you also make sure that there is commitment by political parties. It's not only a legal administrative issue, it's also a political issue, the political will, where I would say, in fact, there need to be penalties to political parties immediately when they veer off from whatever regulatory framework that is there. But my point is very simple: professionalize the bureaucracy. Anything else, in fact, would be insulated from all this kind of theater of chaos that we are saying.
You know, time is unfortunately the enemy here, because the follow-up to that question was, are you saying these are the hallmarks of a mature democracy, and does that mean those that do have it actually do get all of this right? It's such a pity, Desmond Golding, that we can't continue the conversation further on not only the performance of municipalities, the big metros that we've seen, and the reasons behind it, but what does it spell for the upcoming elections?